I love it, Dubulin. I'll just start there, and I just feel very moved by the last part, by the vision of like, I can feel a little like longing for that. Then I hold this question of like, but in this moment in time, in our political circumstance that we're in the US and the world, how much do I challenge myself into a different role?
Devrilyn, thank you so much for doing this. It's really thought-provoking and inspiring.
Using these practices to help us, and I think that no matter where we're sitting, and even whether you agree with the quadrants, I like the quadrant, like I like that and I like want to try and apply it, but like these tools can help us be better in wherever we are.
Well, enjoying the lurk and feeling grateful for the space you're holding and the experience that you're bringing to this conversation. I can feel that.
Hello, and thank you for being curious about my work in political transformation. What follows is a presentation that I gave my community of fellow meditation students, or what we call a Sangha. A Sangha is just the Tibetan word for community. So you'll hear references to Buddhism and to our course materials in this presentation. Please just translate it into your own faith tradition. The more I have learned about of the variety of spiritual traditions that are available, the more I've come to recognize that we are from the same source. We are from the same source. And some call it source, like I just did, or they call it higher power, or they call it God or Allah. What we're trying to get to is the essence of life itself, and understand how we belong to each other, because we're siblings in this vast interconnected experience of life on planet Earth. And we've left in the Q&A and modified the voices of my classmates to protect their privacy. And they ask me questions that are kind of standard questions that I get when I share my story. And they reflect a lot of the same struggles and longings that shaped my own path. Because I didn't set out to enter politics. In fact, I stumbled into it through this vision that you're going to hear the story about. It was both on purpose and on accident. My conscious mind wasn't aware of it. But what I discovered along the way is that politics is not just about power and policy. It is also about spirit and guidance, practice and grounding. And for me, meditation is my anchor that allowed me to stay present, even in this maelstrom of politics in the US that we're experiencing today. So let me take you back to the beginning of that journey, and to how an accidental yoga meditation helped me step into politics and revealed this mystical path of transformation that's available to all of us. Here we go.
All right. Well, I do want to let you all know that as serious as we hold politics, I also think it's kind of funny that I ended up in politics because it was really an accident and meditation came along later. It all started at the Omega Institute in upstate New York. And it was May 3rd, 2003, when I was at a Women in Power retreat. And a bunch of things happened, but the biggest thing that happened was I was doing Savasana at the end of the morning yoga at the Omega Institute. And I had this incredible infusion of wellness, sense of wellness happen in my body during Savasana. And this voice came into my head and said, this is what our political culture could be. Would you like to help bring it about? I was invited in, I was called. And I said, yes, I do. And the voice came back into my head and it said, it may cost you everything you have. Do you still choose it? And I said yes again. And that sense of wellness and well-being, that cohesive, life-affirming and power-sharing political culture, in that moment was embedded in every cell of my body. And I still carry that with me today. And so I just wanted to share with you a little bit of this, that's how it started. And the secret is that I have to remember that we already live in sacred world and it's already perfect, especially when it doesn't feel like it. And I'm sorry if you can hear my dog in the background. I hope you cannot. I went home from that retreat, and I immediately, within 6 months, I was running for a local political office. And after that didn't work, I decided that the answer, I was a new coach at that time, and I decided that coaching candidates was going to be the answer, a way to help our politics heal by helping candidates and then elected officials retain their humanity in a broken system. And that didn't work. And then I decided that I just need to get more women elected, because when there is a high enough number of women involved in politics, it's happened in other countries, transformation begins to happen organically, because the mere presence and the issues that women tend to bring to politics transform systems. And well, that hasn't happened very much either. And then I decided, like, okay, well then I see all these silos of work who are trying to strengthen democracy and help us get along better so we can create better policies in governance. And so I saw these silos of work. And so I built this coalition to bridge between these different silos of work. And it turned out that most of the silos that I was connected to anyway were ego-based and not work-based. And that kind of put a kibosh on that. So before I go into just a little bit more, I just wanted to say here, I had a lot of influences along the way. So since 2000, actually my whole life here, I got trained as an ontological coach. I've done a lot of personal growth trainings. I've been a seeker, a faith seeker, and have explored many different traditions there. I ran other local campaigns. I've advised them. I've been a small business owner. And I became a shaman. I was trained in doing shamanic journeys for myself, not for others. But I have found that this mix of Buddhism and shamanic journeying to be really powerful in my practice, and staying grounded to both recognize the collective consciousness and then also be a force for good in that. So I wanted to share just two of these shamanic journeys that I've had that help me keep the faith that we're going to be okay. We are okay, and it's going to be okay with less suffering than what we see today. And this first one I want to share with you is I call it the release. And March 20th, 2020 was the actual day that this shamanic journey happened. And this one was, of course, 2020 was the pandemic year, right? And so in the early weeks of the pandemic, I sat down to do this journey, and I was immediately let into a place that I return to in many shamanic journeys. And I call it the Temple of Freedom. And in my shamanic world, it is a cavern under the Congress in the United States, under the Capitol building. And when I first started going there, there was this big black rock in the middle of a cavern that wasn't clean. It wasn't yet a temple, and it was chained down. And I recognized in the shamanic visioning that I was doing that was the will and the power of the people that had been chained for use that was not of benefit to the people. And so I had returned there several times and gone through a cleansing process to clean the cavern and have it become the Temple of Freedom. And so in this particular journey, I could feel the sorrow in this rock of power under the Capitol building. And I just went and laid down on top of that rock to attune to it and to share love and appreciation for all that that the vision, the aspiration of the United States had brought. And as I laid on top of the rock, it began to shrink, and it shrank down until it was actually a small child that I was holding in my arms. And I recognized that this small child held the aspirational values of the US that we had not lived into. And as I continued doing that attunement with love between myself and this child that are the values of our country, the child grew stronger and started to grow and got up to where it was, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old, and it stood in front of me. And as it stood in front of me, all of the faces of the world flashed across this child, like it was morphing into all the different cultures that had contributed to the United States and the value of the diversity of our nation. And there was such joy, and we were dancing around, and the shape shifting was continuing as we were dancing around this temple of freedom. And then I invited the child to go out into the forest, and we held hands and we walked out into the forest. And when we got into the forest, this enormous burst of light came out of the child's heart. I can still cry thinking about this. And I saw the light shoot into our local communities, into the hearts of the people of America. And it was a release of power, a release of energy, and a release of power back to the people. And that was the conclusion of that journey, but it has stayed with me now for over 5 years as a symbol of our shifting consciousness, that we are taking back power from those who have misused it. The second one that I'm going to share with you is one from earlier this year. And these two, I think, are very related. And I called this one Societal Doulas. And there, as I went into this journey and entered near a campfire where a lot of my spirit guides were sitting around, there was this kind of acknowledgement that we were entering a new era. And as I looked around, we're in the middle of this beautiful forest, and people are living their lives and they're happy. And all of a sudden, within a flash, there was a raging forest fire that came through and destroyed everything, such that everything that had given us purpose and meaning in life was suddenly gone. And it was a reminder of how nature unfolds. Forest fires are destructive, yes. They are a way of an old forest dying. And they are also a place where new birth happens. The decay and the fire itself is really painful to experience, and it's painful to view later. And the message that I received in this one was to look for the new growth, to look at how nature recovers from, in this death and birth cycle, to continue on. Life finds a way. And the question that came out of this journey for me to redirect my focus was, where do I see new growth? And how can I offer trauma reduction to myself and to others? And recognizing also that often the trauma is caused by our own attachment. And so that one was earlier this year. And I keep reminding myself to look for the new growth and not just focus on the pain. The pain is there. It always will be. Suffering is there. But focusing on the growth is part of the healing and the recovery. So this is my Bodhisattva path in action. And the ways that I use the meditation training from Planetary Dharma in the work that I do. I use a lot of tools, but these are the 4 primary ones. I would say the practice of calm staying to ground myself. You'll recognize now that I walked through this in the opening meditation. The practice of attunement, the practice of non-attachment. And then this practice to begin anew. I didn't learn this from Planetary Dharma yet, but I just learned about it from the Plum Village practice with Thich Nhat Hanh. And it's a restorative ritual to heal relationships. And it's one of the things that I'm going to be using going forward now that I just discovered it. The flower watering is expressing appreciation, recognizing people for things they've done for you, expressing regrets for times you haven't necessarily lived up to your best self, and expressing hurts so that other people have the opportunity to make repairs. And together, this kind of foursome of meditation styles is what keeps me grounded. So I don't know if I have anything else to say about that. So now we're going to get into a little bit of also the theory behind my work. And this, back in 2016, I was developing this in 2016, and I keep updating it. But every time society has gone through some massive changes, and we are in a time of massive change right now, there are 4 easily identifiable groups that have an orientation to the change that's being demanded. There are the protectors, and I used empire in here because John's work, he often talks about empire, but there's the protectors of the establishment, the status quo. There are the protesters who demand change. There are persuaders and influencers, and there are peacemakers who show the way. And there are both shadow and light sides of these 4 roles. And when this first kind of, I feel like it was channeled through me. It just like, I woke up one morning and it was there, kind of thing. I'm very clearly a peacemaker. That is the quadrant that I occupy most of the time. But I recognize and find valid all 4 of these primary roles or archetypes. You might even consider them to be kind of archetypal roles. But let's go a little deeper into this. And the first thing I'm going to show you next is what I call the shadow side, because, we're human and we think about the bad things first. So the shadow of each role in the protectors quadrant here, they use the story of separation to retain power. Protectors in their shadow stage have a domination mindset, authoritarian mindset, and they are willing to use force to keep their power. And then they also present binary or black and white thinking as part of that kind of divide and conquer strategy. And I think we're all well aware of this shadow being around right now. The shadow of the protesters side, it's really interesting because they're fueled by the injustice that's happening from the shadow side of the protectors of the empire. So they're fueled by this rage or resentment or harsh judgment, and they often will try to invoke violence from the protectors, or they might use it themselves in the name of justice. And because of the actions, you can see that they too believe in a story of separation, that we are not all one. The persuaders and influencers in their shadow state have an outsized belief in their ability to persuade and hold personal power. They're much more likely to yield ground, which then emboldens the empire protectors. And they often seek to placate or mitigate from worse outcomes. And we saw a lot of this if you study U.S. history at all in World War II. There was a lot of persuaders and influencers that were trying to placate or mitigate the worst outcomes there. And then the shadow side of the peacemakers is, and this one strikes right into my heart. There's this inability to hold discomfort because we're holding this we're so in this we are all one vision that and I find I learned this from my mom. If there's any discomfort, it's we try to tamp it down. Let's not be uncomfortable here. There could be some impatience for when people don't get it, or coddling people to make them not be so angry. And there's just kind of this magical thinking that everything will be okay if we just know each other better. I built a career basically on that one. So enough of the shadow. What do you think? Let's go to the lighter side here. So The lighter side of these roles is that when protectors of empire or establishment or governance, you can put whatever label you want there, they are responsible for maintaining order and safety. And in their aspirational role, they will use their power to improve living conditions for everyone. And they will very skillfully manage tension between the traditional mindset that likes things the way it is and progress. And that's something we don't have right now, I would say, in the US, at least right now. In the lighter side of protesters, they will highlight and focus and bring up where the current order, the societal order, is failing, especially marginalized groups. And they'll be listened to because the protectors of the empire are listening to them. They will call for fairness and justice, and they will build coalitions to demand progress and make change. Some of these things are happening right now. I just want to let y'all know that in case you don't yet. The lighter side of the persuaders and influencers. The persuaders can hold a North Star, so they can remind the protectors that as we're serving the public, this is the North Star we're shooting for. This is the better life that we're trying to help create a system to manage or to hold. They will use shuttle diplomacy tactics often, and they become respected advisors to the protectors instead of setting up a dichotomy or a power struggle. And then the lighter side of the peacemakers, of course, is hosting conversations or hosting gatherings for brave conversation to happen, being able to hold that tension, that discomfort. They'll mediate between groups of difference, and they will provide experiences for people to have that heart connection with those who are different from themselves. And I want to just real quick highlight that this is a quadrant model in case you hadn't picked up on that yet. And the left side of the quadrant are the insiders, the people who are inside the establishment or have some sort of privilege. And those on the right are those outside the establishment. And on the top row are people for whom violence is a viable tactic. And those on the lowest row, on the bottom row, are nonviolent by nature. And throughout history, we've had, Martin Luther King was a peacemaker, but he knew how to put his people in he would dip over into protesters because he would put people in positions where they could be harmed and allow the protectors of empire to hurt people, which would change then the hearts and minds of other Americans. So it's a really simple matrix, but it gets very complicated in real life. And this last slide, I'm going to turn it over to you here because, one day, I live it in my body. There's going to become a period where we are so deeply connected. We know that we are deeply connected to all of life, that our wheel will turn towards nirvana. And maybe it only lasts a second, or maybe it's a millennia, but I don't care. I want to experience it. Let's do it together.
When I first kind of stumbled into politics, it was in response to a mystical calling. And over time, I came to see it as part of a larger mystical path, one that calls each of us to stay grounded and to release what no longer serves while we help birth or bring in what is new and what does serve us. And each of us has a role to play in this transformation. So I invite you to reflect, what role is yours? So I just want to thank you for reading and listening to the mystical stories for our troubled times. Until next time, may you walk your path with clarity, courage, and compassion. Join us next time.